Whenever we think of felt fabric, we generally think of plushies, ornaments, or some play foods like these. But felt fabric can be used to do more, and this cute little purse is a good example for that. This one is completely hand sewn and it measures 4.5 by 4.5 inches in size. This will be a long video, and let's start with materials and tools. You'll need a felt sheet, and the important thing is this one is 2 mm in thickness, thicker than your regular felt sheet. They usually come in 9 by 12 inch size sheets and are a little bit pricier than the regular ones. For people who live in the USA, I bought this from the Hobby Lobby, and they keep these in the same place as the regular felt sheets. Then you'll need embroidery floss to match with the felt color and a button with 2 or more holes in it. This one is 1 inch in diameter, and I recommend you to use a bigger one like this one to go with our design. You're gonna need all the other essentials like a fabric marking pen, a pair of scissors, pins, a hand needle, a ruler, and finally any circular shape to use in making curvy edges for the purse. Let's start with cutting the felt sheet to our required size. For that, first fold the sheet in half lengthwise. It's simple and you just have to cut the sheet in half. You can then cut along the crease line, but I'm gonna mark the 2 points at the top and bottom ends of the crease to keep things clear. Now using those 2 points as a guide, cut along the line. I'm using my sewing ruler and a rotary cutter to make a sharp cut, but you can use your regular pair of scissors. It will work just fine. This will give you 2 pieces measuring 4.5 by 12 inches in size. We are only going to need 1 piece out of the 2. Now let's start our project with this 4.5 by 12 inch felt piece. The only reason I cut the sheet that way is then nothing goes to waste and you can easily make 2 purses from 1 sheet. First lay flat 1/2 of the felt sheet and then mark 4.5 inches from the bottom end. As we are next gonna fold it over, mark at both edges to make the fold correctly. Using those 2 marked points as a guide, now fold it over. It's already starting to look like a purse, and to keep this pocket-like lower part, we are going to use some pins to keep the fold. Since this is a small area, a couple of pins would be enough. Now I'm going to fold over the top part and show you how it's going to assemble at the end. I'm thinking of curving the part for the flap of the purse, and for that I'm going to use the circular lid I showed you in the beginning. Starting with one of the corners, mark 1/2 inch away from both sides. Use a fabric marking pen, and this one is a heat erasable fabric marker. Now take your circular shape and place that in a way connecting those 2 marked points like the way I do. Then draw along the shape connecting the 2 points. Now do the same for the other corner as well. I'm only doing this for the closing side of the purse. Feel free to curve all 4 corners of the purse if you prefer. I personally think having curvy edges for a purse is much cuter than having sharp corners. Still, I'm only going to curve 2 corners and it's totally up to you. After you drew the curvy edges, cut along those drawn curves. As you know, I'm using a button for this purse, and our next step is to attach the button. Buttonhole has to be on the flap side and the button has to be attached on the layer right below it. I'm starting with the buttonhole. Place the button at the center of the flap and mark the top and bottom end of the button. Now remove the button and using a ruler, draw a straight line connecting those 2 points. Now this will be the buttonhole and we need to make a cut along the drawn line. For that, I'm going to fold the straight line for the buttonhole in half and then make a small cut just enough to insert a pair of scissors through. After that, insert a pair of scissors through the small cut we just made and make a cut along the drawn line. Now be careful not to cut way beyond the drawn line. This will be a perfect buttonhole size for the button we use. Not too loose, not too tight. Our next step is to sew around the buttonhole. For that, I thread my needle with a matching thread color for my design and make a knot at the end. Here I'm using 3 thread counts and it's up to you. Now start to sew along the opening using the blanket stitch. If you are someone who doesn't know how to do the blanket stitch, we have a separate tutorial on that in case you want to check that out. I'll leave the link in the description. Make sure to insert the needle from the back of the flap and that way you can nicely hide away the knot inside. A wonderful thing about felt fabric is it's not gonna fray like most of the other fabrics. So one might think you can just keep this buttonhole as it is and no need to sew around it. The simple answer is yes, you can, but if you are planning on using this purse, you may need to open and close it more than a couple of times. That will surely damage the fabric at the 2 ends with time and also will widen the opening. Another important thing is, just by spending a few more minutes to sew around the buttonhole will surely enhance the look of your purse. You won't be disappointed. Only thing about hand sewing is it takes time and that may give you the wrong impression of hand sewing is hard. Actually, it's not. Just give it a little time. I'm not sure whether you can see this clearly, but when it comes to sewing 2 ends of the buttonhole, I make my last horizontal stitch to end one side. Then start to transition by making an angle stitch to that side. Next one is a vertical stitch, then another angle stitch to the next side. After that, start to make your regular horizontal blanket stitches again. After you made the last blanket stitch, make a knot to end the sewing. Now insert the needle through the buttonhole to move your needle to the back of the flap. Then make another knot to secure your stitch one more time. Just to let you know, all of these small things like how to end the stitch, how to make a knot, How to start a new thread are all included in our blanket stitch tutorial. Make sure you watch that to learn more. Since this is a single layer, we wouldn't be able to hide away that part. Still, it's on the wrong side of the flap and nobody will notice it. Finally, trim the thread. With that done, we are moving on to the design part. Place the button on top of the buttonhole and make sure it's centered as well. Now using a fabric marking pen, draw around the button. Since this one is a heat erasable fabric marker, I'll be able to get rid of these markings easily. Now remove the button and mark equally spaced 4 points around the drawn button shape. You don't need to measure it, just eyeball it. You'll also need to leave some space at the bottom side to sew along that margin at the end. Now roughly connect those 4 points in a shape of a circle like the way I do. It doesn't have to be precise. Now thread your needle and make a knot at the end. I'm using the same thread color as the buttonhole, and this time I'm using all 6 strands. Coming from the back of the flap, insert the needle at the smaller circle and pull it all the way. Then go back down at a point directly opposite in the larger circle. This will make a single straight stitch. These stitches resemble sun rays, and now leave a small space and make another straight stitch from smaller circle to the bigger circle. Then continue to make stitches like these all around the smaller circle. You can make some stitches shorter and some longer. It's up to you. The bigger circle is just there to guide you the length of the rays. Another important thing is, try to keep equal spaces between the stitches to make it look like sun rays. As you can see, I'm using longer threads to sew this project, and that will minimize the number of times you need to change the thread. That will eventually give you less knots and hanging threads at the back of the fabric. When it comes to the two ends of the buttonhole, you will need to compromise a little when making straight stitches. What I do is I insert the needle at the end of a blanket stitch at that area and then go back down at the larger circle. After passing that area, you can continue making stitches from the smaller circle to the larger circle. Engaging in any kind of craft will let you understand your style better. For instance, now I surely know most of my designs are inspired by the sun. It happens even without realizing it. So if you want to know yourself and your style better, I suggest you create your own designs. After you have made the final stitch, turn over to the back of the flap and make a couple of knots to secure the stitch. Finally, trim the thread and don't leave a longer thread hanging. Just keep it short. Now at this point, our simple design is done, and whenever you close the purse, the button is gonna be in the middle resembling the sun. The next step is to attach the button and first close the flap of the purse. Then mark the midpoint of the buttonhole through its opening. Just eyeball it. This will leave a mark at the layer below it, and that's where we are gonna attach the button. For that step, we need to remove the pins first. Then thread your needle and make a knot at the end. Coming from the back of the fabric, insert the needle through a hole in the button while holding the button in place. Pull the needle all the way and then go back down at the other hole in the button. Again, I'm using all 6 strands here. Now repeat the same step for a few more times to attach the button to the fabric tightly. When you think it's secure enough, turn over to the back and make a couple of knots to secure the stitch. Trim the thread at the end. We are one more step away and let me show you how everything looks at this point. I'm gonna fold everything as the way it was before and pin it again to keep things folded. Let's check whether the buttonhole and the button work properly before assembling everything together. It works just fine and I'm more than happy with this simple design. Open the purse and starting from any point, we are going to sew all the way around till we reach the starting point. For that, thread your needle and make a knot at the end. I have chosen a longer thread and I'm using all 6 strands. Now moving on to the last step of this project, we are going to sew along the margins of the lower pocket structure and the flap area of the purse. Now I'm going to remove one of the pins and start to sew in between the 2 fabric layers. This will be a good starting point since you can nicely hide away the knot in between the 2 layers. Once again, we are using the blanket stitch to complete this part as well. Whether it's 2 fabric layers or 1 fabric layer, the way of sewing the blanket stitch is the same. It serves for securing 2 fabric layers together and also as a decorative stitch in this project. I mean, you can only sew the 2 open sides just to make it into a purse, but that won't give the look I'm aiming for. I want this to be a one-of-a-kind piece which will be well suited for gift giving. Christmas is not that far away if you are making handmade gifts. You can easily make 2 of these purses from 1 thicker felt sheet. Just keep sewing once you move on to the single layer area, and in there, blanket stitch will serve as a decorative stitch. Now to keep your decorative blanket stitch more appealing to the eye, it's important to keep equal spaces in between the stitches. One easy trick is you can mark the required space on your thumb and then use that as a guide to move one stitch to another. If you are a beginner at hand sewing, this will ease things for you. I know I have told you to use a longer thread, so you won't need to change the thread frequently. But that may lead the thread to tangle with time. Because of that, make sure to untangle the thread from time to time. I would rather do that instead changing the thread several times. When sewing sharp corners using the blanket stitch, first you can make one last stitch closer to the pointy corner. Then insert the needle at that same stitch end and make your next stitch in a 45-degree angle to align with the corner. Once again, insert the needle at that very same point and make the next stitch at the adjacent side. After that point, you can continue the regular blanket stitch. This is not the only way to do the corners, but it will give you a smooth corner and it will look nice and neat. We are almost at the end, and when you reach the starting point, make a knot or a couple of knots to secure the stitch. Then insert the needle in between the two layers and come through only one layer. Pull the needle all the way and finally trim the thread. With that, we got ourselves a beautiful felt purse. Now there is a small finishing step, and that is to remove all the fabric markings we use in the designing step. For that, I'm gonna give it a heat press since these are heat erasable. I'm gonna place a fabric on top first and then only give it a press. The reason is this is felt fabric and there is also a bit of embroidery work as well. As you can see, the markings have disappeared and we are all good to go. I think color matching also plays an important role when it comes to making these simple designs. Hope you'll give it a try, and it may seem a lot only because I explain things in detail. Please let me know what you think of it and keep this project in mind when you make handmade gifts for the holiday season. If you watched this far, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video as well. Thank you all for watching, and I'll join you in the next one.